President Goodluck Jonathan has made good on his pledge to respect the outcome of the presidential election. After his opponent, former military dictator Muhammadu Buhari, won, Mr. Jonathan conceded defeat. And to talk about this, joining me right now is Vincent Makori, host of VOA's Daily Africa 54 TV show. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a delight being here.
Why do you think this election is historic?
This election has been called historic because, first, it is the first time in Nigeria that the ruling party sitting president has been defeated by an opposition candidate. It hasn't happened ever, so that is historic. It is also the first time that the transition has been very peaceful. Every time there was a transition in Nigeria, there were major skirmishes. People died. Up to 800 people died last time when President Goodluck Jonathan defeated Buhari. The now president-elect, up to 800 people died, or maybe even more. And so it was a very tumultuous time. This is the first time that they have witnessed a very peaceful transition, and not only from one leader to another, but from a ruling party incumbent to an opposition candidate.
Do you think this was expected? Or do you think this is probably because of what happened with Boko Haram?
You know, so much has been associated with Boko Haram in this election because it was the biggest issue in the country for some years now, security. And to a large extent, actually, the outside world saw this as the issue that will determine these elections. But when you speak to a cross-section of Nigerians, they will tell you there was much more than this. There were economic issues. The young people of Nigeria, who are the majority voters in this election, complain of no employment. Many of them are walking the streets without meaningful jobs. There is lack of proper infrastructure. Many are complaining of poor roads. There's no electricity. You go across the country, Nigeria, they have no reliable electricity, which has impacted very, very severely, especially small-scale businesses. Corruption has been said to be rampant in the country. Even big businesses, investors from outside, some of them have just pulled out because of cases of corruption in the country. So there was much more. But of course, the security issue became much bigger, and especially after those 200 girls were taken by Boko Haram in the north, and that persistent attacks by Boko Haram, sustained attacks actually over the years, obviously it became the bigger issue in the country that really became a bigger conversation during the campaigns.
Security was one of the top concerns.
It was one of the top concerns, but there was much more than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how would we differentiate the governing styles of Mr. Buhari and Goodluck Jonathan?
You know, first you have to say that Mr. Goodluck Jonathan at some point had goodwill. He's a person who came almost from nowhere. Many people didn't know him. He started way back as a deputy governor in the River State and came up and eventually became a vice president to a president who passed away, and then he became a president, finishing up the term of his president, and then he was elected. A lot of goodwill, in fact, from both the south and the north of the country, that is Muslim and the Christian south. But for many people, they say he squandered the opportunity. He had all this time, and particularly when it came to the issue of Boko Haram, they say he downplayed it. He downplayed the threat by his utterances, by his actions, up to the point where it became like completely out of hand. Now, what do people look forward to, and how do they differentiate Mr. Buhari? Remember, he was a military ruler way back in 1985. People remember the little taste of his leadership, which wasn't too long, but they saw action from him. This is a guy who kind of believed in discipline in the country. So they believe he's going to bring order to the country, because he did at that time. Even civil servants, when they got late to work, you have to do some frog jumps as punishment for coming late to work. He clamped down on corruption. As an individual, he has not taken the advantage of power to enrich himself, not when he was president or a military ruler when he could do it, but even later on, he has not been tainted by corruption. And then people see him as a person who has nothing else to lose by being a good president. He's not trying to amass wealth. and he has tasted power in the past. He's not overexcited about being president. He wants to make a difference. And that is what really, for most people, see as the fundamental differences between him and the outgoing president.
And if you can summarize this in 30 seconds, what does this vote mean for the future of Nigeria?
This is the first time that Nigerians are seeing the possibility of having a truly democratic country led by a civilian president, and with a possibility of changing their leadership whenever they are not satisfied with their leaders.
Fantastic. We'll keep our eyes on that. Thank you so much for joining us,
Most
for
welcome.
your insights.
I enjoyed being here.
All right, Vincent McCory, host of Africa 54 TV show. Thank you so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.